So, hi, everyone. I am so glad that you could join us today in this dynamic panel. We are coming to you live with the Illinois Alliance for Reentry and Justice. And we have some phenomenal members of this panel who will be joining us to speak from their experience and their perspective on what justice looks like in Illinois, in the Midwest, and across the country. If everybody could just take a few moments and introduce themselves and say what perspective you'll be speaking from on this panel today, starting with you, Wilette.
Hello, everyone. My name is Wilette Benford, and I will be speaking from a justice-impacted individual's perspective.
Hi, my name is Toy Beasley. I'm with TASC, Treatment Alternatives for Safer Communities. I would also be preaching from a justice-impacted perspective.
Thank you, Toy. Celia, will you go next for us, please?
Sure. I will be speaking from a directly impacted point of view as a woman who's formerly incarcerated.
So glad you could be with us today. Marlon?
Thank you, Brittany. Once again, my name is Marlon Chamberlain, and I will be speaking from a directly impacted perspective, and also I am the project manager of the Illinois Alliance for Reentry and Justice.
Last but not least, Representative?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. State Representative Justin Slaughter. I'll be speaking from the perspective of a lawmaker, but also a lifelong individual that's grown up in the Black community, in an underserved community, and then also someone who is the chair of the House Judiciary Criminal Committee that is very aligned with the work of this great initiative. Thanks for having me.
And everyone, my name is Brittany White. I'm coming to you all just so honored to facilitate this conversation as a Black woman who's been impacted by the criminal justice system. It has always been sacred to me to lift up the perspective of women who have been impacted by felony conviction and their unique experience within America's criminal justice system. I am a daughter of the Midwest, so it's always my absolute pleasure to join maybe the second or third best state in the Midwest, Illinois. I'm just teasing. So with that humor aside, we will get to the subject matter that brings us all together today. So Wilette, if I may direct this first question to you, in what ways could this alliance be a factor in creating a statewide coordinated reentry service? And for our viewers, I think it's important to talk about how statewide resources could really support a trajectory of success for those who are coming back to society.
Well, thank you, Brittany. I believe that the Alliance could support a statewide reentry because the Alliance is unique. It's so unique because it has different providers, social advocates, faith-based organizations. It has all different types of organizations collaborating across the state to bring resources to those that are directly impacted. And when you put all those resources in one place, it makes it so easy for someone that's returning to our community to be able to access those resources, because currently different organizations operate in silos. And by them operating in silos, there's a break for when someone needs one resource to get to the next. So what the Alliance can do is bring all of those resources together under one umbrella, and that way it makes it easy to set someone up returning home for success. And a lot of times when someone comes home, they're really set up for failure because of the fact that everybody is so disconnected in the reentry community. The reentry community it should be targeted, towards people like me that's directly impacted, but also it should come the direction of how to proceed should also come from someone like me that's directly impacted, because I know best what I need.
I have heard from many formerly incarcerated people that they would like to be invited into that process of imagining and strategizing. What my assumption is that many people don't know what language to use to make those invitations. So could you just model for us what would be an appropriate way to invite you to these decision-making tables to talk about your experience that also honors your dignity? And Cecilia, I would love to hear from you as well.
Yes. When someone invites me to a table, you know, um, you know, to leave someone with their dignity, especially after they've already served their time, it would be, the language would be justice impacted. I know that you are a justice impacted individual, or I know that you've been involved in the criminal legal system, because there's a lack of justice in it. But we would like for you, as someone who has been impacted by the system, to be able to join our table. Not an ex offender, an inmate, or, those words are offensive, especially after someone has served their time. And then you don't even know what they've been incarcerated for, or whether they were, exonerated, or their record was expunged or anything. And so you need to humanize people in the door, because that way, when you humanize people, it lets them know that you value who they are and value what they bring to the table. And so we
Amen.
don't just want to be someone that just sits at the table. We want to be valued at the table. And really, the Alliance helps us create our own table.
Yes,
Because
yes.
they can come and see what we need and what we have to offer.
I think that's the tweet right there. We don't just want to sit at the table. We want to be valued at the table. So Celia, bring it home for us on this question, please.
Yes. I just want to piggyback off of everything my sister Wilette said. When we get invited to the table, yes, I like to be considered a justice impacted person, because I don't like the term returning citizen or ex-offender. Returning citizen, we still don't get all of our rights back, all of our civil rights. So unless I am given back all of my civil rights, then you can call me a returning citizen, which I am not. For me, again, just like Wilette, I would like to be at the table to help create solutions, seen as a subject matter expert. I have been through the trenches. I have been in this, navigating these waters. I've been home for 19 years. I understand the barriers that a lot of my fellow justice impacted people, especially women, face. Women have a unique impact on incarceration and in the next generation. A lot of 80% of people, inmates that were incarcerated, came from foster care. So that leads you to believe that the care that is needed for women is not out there. The resources for formerly incarcerated women are not out there. This is the thing that I bring to the table as a mother, as a community member, and as someone who's been navigating these waters for 19 years. I am a subject matter expert. I do have solutions. I am closer to the problem. So therefore, I am closer to the solution. I know what we need. So don't use me as a token to say you have a justice impacted person on your team. Use me as one of your experts to create solutions that actually create economical change, that actually create generations of healing in our community, because that's what's missing. The holistic approach to reentry.
I think that's beautiful. And that is a great segue point to our next question, which I'm going to direct towards you, Representative. So now we have identified these phenomenal, directly impacted candidates, and they have a strategy and a theory of change. And so now they are looking to work with a policymaker who could legitimize their concern. Could you talk about what is the best way for directly impacted people to work with policymakers and lawmakers in this current environment?
Yes, definitely. And thanks for the question. I think it's always important to understand and work with those that have been directly impacted. As we continue to push for emerging practices, evidence-based practices, and best practices, the best example that can be leveraged is one of a real situation. One of the words that was used was humanize. I think that really categorizes and defines what lawmakers are looking for in terms of putting forth solutions and initiatives. And so, I think that one of the things that lawmakers can continue to do is continue to seek out those that have been impacted. And when you talk about a statewide sort of network, it's understanding that a lot of the factors that may exist, of course, in Chicago and Cook County are also a part of Central Illinois, downstate Illinois, but then it's also understanding the nuanced differences that certain different populations and areas may bring. And the only way to truly holistically, comprehensively understand those challenges and understand what's working and what isn't working is to create that dialogue. And so I would just encourage those that have been impacted to continue to lift up your voices and continue to put forth that message and that communication with lawmakers.
All right, let's hear from the perspective of a directly impacted person on this question. Marlon, what's your experience been like working with lawmakers to affect change from your experience as a directly impacted leader?
So I think some specific examples that I could give is a few years ago, there was a subject matter hearing where a couple of us, like directly impacted folks, were able to share like our expertise on several issues, which resulted in the passing of the largest ceiling expansion bill that we've seen across the country. And I think from that subject matter hearing, we were able to bring real life experiences of what like obstacles we face as we transition out of prison and try to move on with our life. I think also we've worked with legislators where we were able to draft a piece of legislation from the start. And I think the normal way that legislation is drafted is that someone will draft a piece of legislation and then they'll ask directly impacted folks what we think about it. And I think to me the best practice is when we help develop the legislation and even wrote parts of it, and then we're able to lobby along with the legislators in Springfield. To me, that was a best practice. I would also say hosting panel discussions to educate legislators around these issues that we face. But to me, I would say the best practices that I've seen is that when we work, and you use the word dignity, when we work in true partnership with the legislators, I've seen the most effective work.
Yeah. And if I could just jump in just for 5 seconds, Marlon is absolutely correct. When we're in Springfield or holding a committee hearing, everyone, all the lawmakers will tell you that the most impactful, significant testimony that we hear when in regards to subject matter experts are those that are impacted. Oftentimes, that testimony will make the difference in legislation, moving forward. And Marlon's right. If you can at the catalyst, at the crux of putting together legislation, if advocacy groups and those that feel passionate about the work are there at the beginning, it creates an unexplainable sort of synergy that you have from the beginning that really, again, makes a significant difference in your tenacity to get the job done and to pass a bill.
This is a really good conversation because I think people usually get to hear from either or. You get to hear from directly impacted people or policymakers. It's very rare that you get to see us actually all come to the table. Toy, we would like to open up with you. What are some of your priority policies that you would like to put in front of lawmakers this upcoming year?
Thanks for allowing me to share. I think that we need to be more involved. Legislation get more involved what happens inside our prisons. I think there needs to be more reentry inside the prisons. And when I say reentry inside the prisons, there needs to be more prisons that bring the whole holistic approach as when it comes to treatment availability, mental health availability, job coaching, job training. You know, there are a couple of facilities in Illinois that offer that whole holistic approach when it comes to job training, treatment. But I think that we need to bring to them about open up more prisons, about having a holistic approach, because we need to start working with our guys on the inside first. We cannot wait until they get on the outside. Being a formerly incarcerated person 20 years ago, things are different today. You know, back then when I went through the system, we didn't have a whole lot of job training, mental health or substance abuse treatment. We need to bring that more to the table and talk to our legislators or talk to our directors as part of IDOC is how can we bring that? Because if we cannot get them inside the institutions, then where are we going to start at? We can't wait till they get out to start that. So yes, I think that I would bring these issues to them so we can have that availability for them and not a wait list, because most of these prisons that have these whole holistic approach, treatment, mental health, job training, there's long waiting lists. We need to come up with something that we can create a short waiting list or no waiting list at all. They can come straight into the prison and we can start on their reentry right when they get there.
Thank you so much, Toy. I'm going to go to Marlon. Marlon, you seem to have thought a lot about these policies, and I've seen you at a lot of these tables. So what are some of your priority policies you would like to put in front of lawmakers this upcoming year?
So I would definitely love to see the ending of cash bail. I would love to see sentencing reform. I would love to see us expand expungement and sealing eligibility. I would also love to see sealing to where after a person has been home, that there would be some piece of legislation where that record would be like not necessarily expunged, but that it would be basically taken off that person's record. And so that person would no longer have to live with the stigma of a criminal record because they've completed their sentence, parole, probation, and then that record is completely abolished and gone.
Those are excellent. Celia, I'm coming to you next. What are some policies you would like to put in front of lawmakers this upcoming year?
I would love to have a social work kind of policy that actually creates trauma-informed practices and healing workshops inside of every state prison, because we know that at least for women, 86% of women have been a victim of some kind of crime or some kind of violence prior to incarceration. We also know that all people inside of state prisons qualify for a lifetime of PTSD. That is data that I got from the Vera Institute. So when we're looking at how people even end up in that space, it usually comes from unprocessed trauma. And, you know, in my community, we've never even been exposed to what healing looks like. So I think that when we get to the root cause of what caused the incarceration, right? The social structures, the harm that's out here, right? The social and structural harms, we forget that we tend to forget as people that I would say lawmakers, when they're sentencing someone, they tend to forget about these things. They tend to forget about the unprocessed trauma and harm that this individual might have came from. So therefore, I think that if we can implement them kind of practices inside of the prison and really help rehabilitate people and create economical packages for people 2 years prior to them leaving to really give them a chance at success and really stop this revolving door in this intergenerational incarceration, you know, that we're just living in right now. There's a lot of intergenerational incarceration due to the parents.
The governor of Illinois, Governor Pritzker, released some proposed reforms for criminal justice. And I'll just quickly read the overheading for them. The first one was to end the use of the cash bail system and limit pretrial detention to only those who are a threat to public safety. To modernize sentencing laws on theft and drug offenses and use a public health approach to address mental health addiction. Reduce excessive lengths of stay in prison by providing pathways for people to earn opportunities for rehabilitation. Number 4 is to prioritize rehabilitation and reduce the risk of recidivism by increasing access to housing and health care for returning citizens. Number 5 is increase police accountability and transparency for police officers and police departments. Number 6 is to update and strengthen statewide standards for use of force by police officers. And finally, number 7 is to improve interactions with police by decriminalizing minor nonviolent offenses, improving police responses to crowd control, and increasing language and disability access. Now, while we appreciate the governor releasing these reforms, as formerly incarcerated people, we have an even more nuanced perspective of how these strategies will actually land. So, Wilette, if we could just get your reaction and your feedback to these reforms from the governor, please.
Well, everything looks good on paper. Everything sounds good on paper, but there has to be a level of accountability, and within the prison system, with the police, with everyone that's mentioned, with the housing people, with everyone, there's no level of accountability. And that is lacking. The governor can put all of those on the table and say that that is his criminal justice reform approach for this season. However, there has to be some type of metric to monitor that and make sure that people are being held accountable to do that, with the police reform and, just being inside and seeing the lack of accountability with correctional officers and those that are in authority. I pause to think that such a huge, I could say such a huge blanket of things to accomplish would be accomplished. It's just, it sounds good. I would love for it to happen. But like I said, I think there needs to be a level of accountability on each front because, returning citizens deal with getting housing, being harassed by the police, even being harassed by a parole officer. There has to be some accountability from the time someone goes in to the time they come out.
I agree with you so much, Wilette. We have been given so many good ideas without a course of action on how to move forward with them. So, Representative, we would love to hear from your perspective and the many different hats that you bring to this work. What would be your reaction, as much as you could share, to these suggested reforms?
Well, first of all, I 100% agree with the responses that have been given. I was just jotting down some notes in regards to what legislative initiatives were coming up this year. I'm extremely excited for all of these. Some of these actually are bills that are already out there. Some of them looks like that I'm actually sponsoring. But I think what we want to really emphasize here, as we roll this out and want to be a national model, legislation are just words on a piece of paper. What I think we're really honing in on and focusing in on, at least within the Black Caucus, is not just putting forth legislative measures, but looking at implementation. What needs to be in place for these policies to take effect and to take hold? When you think about racism, it's institutional and it's structural, and there's layers to it. And there's a culture that we're fighting here, and one that wasn't made overnight. These are years and years and years of racist policies that we want to address. And so I think if you look at it from a standpoint of a two-pronged approach, yes, we need to get the bill across. And I do believe the Illinois Alliance for Reentry and Justice, I think I got the title right there. I know that they're going to be very, very, very instrumental in getting the bill to the governor's desk. We at the end of the day, we are happy, right, that the governor and lieutenant governor, that they're prioritizing this. And, we feel confident that if we get a bill to their desk, it will be signed. But one thing that this coalition and our coalition will be fighting for is on the implementation side. And, we want to make sure that all of our justice-related government entities in a intergovernmental way, city, county, state, and even working with the federal government to ensure that whatever we would do at the state level is being implemented, and it is having an impact. And these are tough conversations. Marlon knows oftentimes we talk about resources. How do we get, our coalition to come together to articulate why we need to shift resources from the budget? Well, there's no money there. Yes, there is. We have a $40 billion budget, that we routinely vote on. Resources are there. How do we leverage our experiences and message out to the entire state that these resources need to be realigned and we need to reimagine our system. And so really just happy to hear a lot that's coming out of the panel and what we're embarking upon.
Absolutely. Stay tuned. We got more for you, Representative. So
Great.
I'm going to go to Celia now, if I may.
Sure.
And one thing that I have experienced in working in this policy field is that people enter into policy discussions with different levels of learning. And so for someone who is not familiar with much policy language, who may have just come home from prison after doing 10 years, how would you begin to onboard them into this discussion of how policymakers make change and how directly impacted people should be a part of that conversation? Let's make it super accessible and digestible for our audience who they may be new to these conversations.
Right. So the first thing I would do is, of course, welcome them to the Alliance, right? We are a huge network of social workers, social justice warriors who all have a different level of education and a different perspective. So I would welcome them to that space. I would also welcome them to stand in their truths, right? To talk about the things that they've seen, the things that they went through, the things that need to be changed so that other people aren't harmed. And that's how it starts, right? With you just raising awareness, you being brave enough to talk about these things, right? Then collaborate with a team that already is doing this, having a coach, having a mentor, having a just huge network of people that you can rely on to walk you through this process. It's not something that's easy, but it's something that can be done. I mean, you're looking at people right in front of you who have been a part of policy change, right? Because we know we deserve better. We deserve to be treated like every other human being in the world, with dignity and respect. And I think that when we decide that we demand this and that our voices need to be heard, there's no magical words. There's no prepping. There's you standing in your truth. You speaking about how you should be treated as a human being, as a mother, as a father, as a brother, as a sister, as a grandparent, because we are not the crime that took place. It was just an experience. It's something that happened a lot of times for most of it, something that happened when we were really, really young. And, our brains were still not even developed. So there comes a point in time where you mature and you learn things, right? And then you come home and you could never unsee what you have seen or forget where you came from. So therefore, this makes you want to fight for everyone that's still there and everyone that's facing these waters now, because it's not just me, it's my whole family. You have to realize when someone has a record, our whole family is destroyed, right? Because our environment makes us successful. And if I don't have a successful environment, meaning that I can't get a great job, I can't have good healthcare, I can't live in a safe community, supported community, then how am I going to succeed? So I think a lot of it just starts with getting to know who's in your community, finding out what organizations are fighting for the causes that you would like, support them in any way that you can, whether it's, physically, financially, and start learning that process, because we all can be a change agent.
That's wonderful. Marlon, I'm going to direct the same question to you. For people who are coming in at a different level of skill sets, how are we making this information accessible and digestible to people with different lived experiences, please?
That's a great question, and I just think about like the uniqueness of the alliance, and I sort of look at the alliance as being a community. And one of the things that we talked about yesterday in our monthly meeting is we talked about developing layers, or like a structure, to where if I meet somebody who's recently been released and they're fresh out, they don't know anything about policy or advocacy, the first steps that we want to do is connect them to resources, and then coach them throughout the process, or be there to support them throughout the process. And then when they're ready, then introduce them to the advocacy work. And so, like I said before, in our monthly meeting yesterday, we had someone who was recently released after doing 16 years. And when he shared that, people immediately began sending him a note saying, get in contact with me, I can help you do this. And so to me, that's the first step. And then I would just say, in my organizing career, the beginning of my career, I used to think that my job was to teach people everything. And what I've learned is that when people would show up in Springfield, the learning would happen. And then I would be there to sort of coach them through what happened. And so my job is just to get them there. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to know everything. The job is just to show up, get involved, and then you'll learn as you go. Because I think a lot of times we think that we have to know everything before we walk into something, when really the goal is just to activate people. And like I said, what I love about the Alliance is that it represents different organizations, different professions. And so our job is to activate people and allow them to choose the vehicle that they want to use to do this work. And so I would say just to activate people and allow them to show up and learn on their own.
Yeah, and I'm going to take the liberty to stretch that and say that as people come into our space and into our community, we also have to make them feel welcomed. And we also have to take on a different orientation that accommodates the people we want to see. So if we want people with lived experiences and in all walks of life, we have to be more tolerant and more welcoming of the community we want to be in relationship with. And so this year of 2020 has presented a number of challenges for people personally and professionally. And with much respect to those who have been diagnosed with COVID-19 and those who have lost their lives and loved ones, I just want to send my condolences, my prayers, and my respect. What I think we can agree on as a society is that this is a redefining moment for us, for our cause. And so my question to you, and I would like to start with Toy, is COVID-19's redefinition of this moment. While it is sad to those who have been infected and lost their life, is this a challenge or a game changer for your cause in this current climate?
I think it's a game changer because I think that COVID-19 opened up a lot of portals and eyes for people to see how we need to make change, how things work, because, right after the COVID happened, then the racism, police brutality, all things started happening, And so I think that to help deal with the things that we're going through in life is that we have to be involved in some type of recovery support. A lot of times people, when they go through life struggles, they think they can handle it on their own. They think that they don't need no help. I know me as a Black man, I was brought up that I shouldn't cry. I can handle my own struggles. You don't need nobody. Or going to church, being brought up in church and believing that God would take care of it. And that I don't need no help outside that. But I found out that COVID-19 has helped me to open up and talk more about the life struggles I go through. How did it affect me? How did this whole thing of police brutality affect me? How did this whole thing of racism that's going around in our country affect me? And for many, many years, I avoided the topic of racism. But now with the COVID-19 and all this stuff going on now, I'm more open to talking about it by sharing my experience, Street and Hope, and hopefully that individuals that may be going through those life struggles, that they can find some type of recovery support that they're going to. Some type of recovery support they can get connected to. I know a lot of people that are part of a church or an AA or NA meeting or just a small group, they can begin to utilize those support systems to help them navigate what's going on in COVID-19. Like I said, the COVID-19 had brought a lot to us. It had opened our eyes to see that we cannot do life alone. So it also, I think it educated us more on what we need to do in life to keep us safe, to keep us sane.
Wilette, I'm coming to you with that same question. With this COVID-19 pandemic, has it been a challenge or a game changer for your cause?
It has been a bit of both. It has been a challenge to navigate COVID-19, but it has also been a game changer because of the exposure that it gave to show the disparities in our communities of color and to show just how the economic disparities with healthcare and how people of color are treated, not only period throughout our nation, but especially during a pandemic. And it just exposed so many things and it opened my eyes so much. And it made me get to the point where I realized that I was a little bit too old to pretend. And I say that because, you know, just being gut honest about it. It revealed the racism, it revealed the poverty, it revealed how, white supremacy does not care about poor Black people in low income areas or, brown people. It just revealed so many things. And it became a game changer for me because I knew that my voice, I could use it to speak up for people that wouldn't otherwise speak up for themselves and didn't know how. So to begin to advocate for people and begin to advocate for myself in a way that I never had before. But it has been challenging, especially being a returning citizen, and Celia doesn't like returning citizen, but a formerly impacted individual, coming back into society and not having things given to me that should have been because I've served my time. It just was a challenge, but also being able to advocate also for myself to get those things.
Thank you for that, Wilette. Representative, I believe folks would like to hear from you on this question as well. Can you take 2 minutes and answer
Sure.
for the people? Has COVID-19 been a challenge or a game changer for your causes?
Yeah, most definitely. It has been a game changer because it has been such a challenge. And before I go any further, just wanted my thoughts, prayers are with everyone in regards to going through the pandemic. But I think this gives us a great opportunity to rise to the occasion and to meet the challenge. The only way that you really get over the hump here is to look at it as a game changer. And there's been so much that has been exposed in terms of the disproportional adverse impact that people of color have that has been exposed. It's important to kind of get collected, become stronger, more unified, so that we can continue to address these issues. The word I used was continue to address these issues. A lot of what we knew or know has been confirmed throughout these last few months with the pandemic. The holistic challenges, some of the comprehensive issues that we're having, and a lot of them, when you start to do the research, a lot of this, if not all of it, is interrelated, right? And so it's certainly been a game changer. And if people are not energized and ready to go now, I don't know when they ever will be. But things happen for a reason, and I do honestly and truly believe that this will make us stronger. And in regards to all of the initiatives that we're talking about now, they're so pertinent, so much of so critical and so vital to the work that I really see it more as a game changer than I do a challenge. Now, there's a lot of things, a lot of work ahead. We need to stay in attack mode in terms of addressing these issues and remain aggressive. But when you start and grow initiatives like the Alliance for Reentry and Justice, I think we're on the right track here.
I appreciate that, Representative, because you have now brought us to the lightning round. So for this last,
Nice.
absolutely, I'm showing up with a little game show energy. So for this last question, you each will have 30 seconds to answer this question, and then we will have 30 seconds for final remarks, and we will wrap. So I would like to start with Celia, if I may.
Okay. Sure.
How can you imagine, what is the opportunity for the Alliance to be a statewide voting bloc? And maybe, I'm going to even throw this in there and say maybe a nationwide voting bloc.
What is the possibility, you said?
What does the opportunity look like? What does your imagination say about that?
My imagination says the opportunity is there, and it's a game changer. I mean, we now have the attention of the people who were not paying attention, right? Because the numbers, they prove all the statistics that have been out there for years in regards to people of color, of how we're treated in America and how we are not supported in many spaces. So I think that the Alliance brings that to the table. We have so many people in the Alliance who are willing to go out there and knock on doors and get people registered to vote and build a building block that I believe Illinois has never seen.
That's beautiful. Toy, same question to you. What is the opportunity for the Alliance to be a statewide or maybe even nationwide voting bloc?
I think Cecilia said it great. COVID-19 exposed a lot of different things. And I think that with bringing in the Alliance and right when COVID-19 happened, I think that it brought us together to push our people that their vote counts. We also have to encourage them, educate them on what is voting is, because a lot of our people that are getting out of prison, they're not educated on what voting is, what's the purpose behind it. So I think that the Alliance can help push that, help educate our people, even that's a part of our Alliance monthly and the ones that's coming, to help them educate on the importance of voting and that pushing it through the alliance.
That was simply brilliant. Now we will go to Wilette. Wilette, what is the opportunity for the alliance to be a statewide or possibly a nationwide voting bloc?
I think the possibilities are, it is absolutely possible. There are approximately 4 million people in the state of Illinois with records that are formally impacted that can vote. There are laws that, in Illinois, a lot of people have misinformation about being able to vote when you return, but the moment you step foot on the soil out of prison, you can register to vote in Illinois. And, as far as getting that done here and then going nationwide to different states that already do not have, that won't allow people to vote, when we build that power here, we can move it across the state and then move it into different states and just begin to be a model for different states. Because Desmond, I think his name is Desmond Meade, he wrote a book, said, "Let my people vote." Those are formerly impacted individuals that need to vote. And you want our money, you want our taxes, and you want that all across this nation. But you also need to restore our right to vote so we'll have a say in the issues that affect us.
Yes.
All right, Wilette, we're going to keep giving you the mic. Representative, how would you imagine this alliance as a statewide or possibly a nationwide voting bloc?
Well, yeah. I mean, the opportunity is certainly there. What is ridiculous? Over 4 million people in our state with criminal background records, and so when you just look at the population and how so many people are impacted by this, I think the opportunity is certainly there. We also have a great opportunity to leverage. I think now. A lot of individuals that maybe historically have not looked at this issue are starting to also at least express their thoughts and concerns about these challenges, and so there's a lot to leverage there as well. And then lastly, I would say more so than ever, the feeling or the confidence and encouragement to talk to folks that don't maybe haven't experienced this, or to talk to folks that maybe traditionally have not understood or worked with this population before is also there as well. I do see more and more of a dialogue happening with those that have really stood in opposition historically, and so all this is a great opportunity.
Marlon, bring us home. How do you imagine the alliance as a statewide or nationwide voting bloc?
So that is actually one of the goals of the alliance, is to register 1 million people with records to vote. And so I would say that is something that we're looking to develop a strategic plan to make that happen. And we need funding and we need people and willing bodies, but that is one of the goals of the alliance.
All right, folks. Well, unfortunately, we have run out of time, but I am absolutely honored to be here with these brilliant minds. Please get connected to the alliance, and we will see you back at the next panel. Hello, everybody, and welcome back. I am so excited to once again join this esteemed panel and be able to answer some of your questions live. So let's just jump into the first question, and this one will be directed towards each of you. Cecilia, we'll start with you. What are some interventions that you would recommend that people don't go to prison in the first place?
Look for a network of support outside of your home. So surround yourself with people who want you to do better, people who invest in you, people who nurture you, people who push you to be a better person, who connect you to educational opportunities, who connect you to great investments that you can make in yourself to make a better life for yourself and your family. Things that also, I would also say volunteer with community groups and orgs that are fighting for causes that you believe in, that will help move our agenda forward, which is creating equality in America.
Thank you so much. Marlon, can we hear from you next, please?
Definitely. I would say more diversion programs where they would, if a person is arrested, they would then send that person to a program that I would hope would be ran by directly impacted individuals or individuals that have had some sort of interaction with the criminal justice system that could really help mentor and really get to the root cause of why this person committed a crime in the first place and help them develop coping skills and skills, whether it's a job, whether it's whatever skills are needed to help that person leave a life of crime alone. And so I would recommend more diversion programs.
I appreciate that. Representative, may we hear from you next, please?
Sure. Good afternoon, and it's great to be back with our panel. Good to see everyone. But no, I would say that there certainly needs to be a focus more into behavioral health and mental wellness. When you look at the trauma and a lot of the issues that permeate through underserved communities and communities of color, it's important that we look at the mental well-being of these populations. Also, economic opportunity. You know, what are we doing in regards to job placement, job opportunities, and access to the economy in terms of being a positive and productive citizen. But we also know that this is a holistic approach. So things that are able to connect us with a comprehensive array of services that address many of our community needs, the lack of education, public health, our high unemployment rate. These are all factors that certainly play into how we interface with the criminal justice system.
Thank you so much. Wilette, will you go next for us, please?
I will. I think just what everyone else has said, but the poverty and the lack of livable wages, I think, contribute to everything as far as being incarcerated, because, like we know that neighborhoods that flourish are not the ones with the most police. They are the ones with the most resources. And so those resources being channeled into Black and Brown communities would
Yeah.
cut down on crime and anything else. And so people don't commit crimes just because they are criminals. Most people are committing them because they are desperate and they don't have any resources, and poverty plays a huge part in it. So really just redirecting those finances, the government redirecting finances into our communities so that we will have livable wages so we can take care of our families.
Toy.
Just piggyback on what everyone said. I think it's important for our men and women to get involved in their community. I think that when our men and women come out, they don't know anything about the community. You know, they may have lived in that community all their life, but they don't know the resources in their community. So I think it's important that's why I think I'm very grateful for the Alliance, so we can create that tunnel. So when they get out of prison, they know what resources in their community. So I think that that's why the recidivism rate is so high, because a lot of people are reoffending because they don't know what's going on in the community. They don't know what that's offered to the community that can help them get from point A to point B.
Yeah, I'm going to take a little moderator privilege and also jump in on this question. As a formerly incarcerated Black woman, one thing that I remember that left me vulnerable to go into the system is that many times when I felt like I was at a disadvantage, the only tool I felt like I had in my tool belt was aggression. That when I tried to advocate for myself, when I tried to follow the protocols and procedures to get the resources that I needed, I often found myself at a disadvantage and not taken seriously, which left me to rely on aggression, which is a tool that leads you in the pipeline to the prison. So we have to supply people with the resources they need to meet their basic needs with dignity and provide them a pathway to flourish. But we also have to understand people have righteous anger, and we cannot use anger as a tool to deprive people from their basic needs. With that being said, Willette, I'm going to direct this next question to you. And it's, how has your interaction with employers been? So I'm going to give that a little meat and say that I think people are really wanting to know, people who have a felony impacted background, what does that pathway to employment look like when you come home?
When coming home, I was a little nervous about getting a job because I had been out of the workforce in society for so long. I did work every single day while I was inside, but coming home, my interaction with employers was the exception, not the rule. I was hired by an alderman and worked at City Hall for my first year. And, it was a good experience because it allowed me to see the inner workings of government and different things like that. But that was an exception. Many of the people that I lived at the transitional house with couldn't get work. They wouldn't hire them, and I think that let me know that my situation was an exception, but it was never the rule. And I haven't had a problem getting a job, but I've seen so many people struggle with being able to get a job. So if they're struggling, I'm struggling because we are all one. And so I don't want to be the exception. I want to be the rule. So I want everybody to be able to get employment.
I appreciate that because you brought up something that's a very interesting point that I want to make sure doesn't go over people's heads. That there really is not a gap in your work history when you go to prison, because when you're in prison, you said you worked every single day.
Every
And
day.
so now you're trying to come home and work with dignity, and it's just a lot of confusion. Marlon, let's hear from you. What has the pathway to employment been like in your experience?
So I just want to piggyback off what Wilette said, and also just say that one of the unique things about the Illinois Alliance for Reentry and Justice is that we have a wealth of experience from directly impacted individuals, service providers, policy and advocates, people from the faith community, and also people from educational institutions. So I think for me, I look at 1,198 barriers that people face when they come home from prison, and a huge chunk of that is really related to employment. And so, with my experience, I didn't come home looking for a job. I've been recruited for every position that I've been in, but I agree with Willette. My goal and the goal of the alliance is to flip it to where we're not the exceptions, and that the norm is that once a person finishes their sentence, that they can come home and find employment without having to jump through loops and obstacles because their sentence is over. And so I think, like I said, the goal of the alliance is to really build power in a way to where we can change how we negotiate policy, how policy is drafted, because I think all of us can share like our individual employment stories, but the sad fact of the matter is that the majority of people who come home face these 1,198 barriers that people face when they come home from prison. And so I think the important thing is to continue to build so that we can change the question that we have, and start looking at like how can we create career opportunities for directly impacted individuals to get involved in this work to change how our interactions happen with employers.
Yo, these are some good answers. This is what happens when you put brilliant people in the virtual room together and the magic gets to flowing. Please remember to our audience that we are still accepting live questions. You can type them in the chat right now. And with that being said, we'll go to the next question. All right, folks. So even with the ban the box legislation, many folks with backgrounds don't end up being hired. What are ways you have been able to succeed in changing their opinions? So when you're in front of that decision maker, what are you able to do to advocate for yourself, to make yourself a candidate? And representative, I think it would be helpful to hear from you. What is some of your thoughts on what people can do to advocate for themselves with decision makers to hire them in these perilous times?
Right. Great question, and definitely a very important question, the last one as well. One of the big issues I think that needs to be addressed is how do we promote and build up economic opportunities and jobs within our communities. So when you look at cooperative economics and small businesses, I'm located here on the south side of Chicago. That's where my district is. I have a lot of constituents that come through my doors that have been impacted by the system that are looking for jobs. We tend to be able to work with small businesses a little more and advocate for those that have been impacted with small businesses. I think much easier when you're able to have a direct dialogue with that employer and with that business owner, and then we encourage the fact that just because you're impacted by the system, you also don't always have to be an employee. You can be an employer yourself. And so these are some of the things that we want to continue to push. Now, with some of the larger corporations, it certainly has been a challenge. I certainly had a very I wouldn't say great experience of working with the corporations, but I think it takes all of the stakeholders, whether it's the community, policymakers, et cetera, to continue to have these discussions with some of our larger employers that are now taking a look at this. But Marlon already hit on this. There are so many barriers. There's so many barriers to unpeel and address. These are some of the things that and just because you're a big employer doesn't mean that you can't go directly to the decision makers that are hiring and advocate for folks. So I've been doing that. I've certainly been, talking with big corporations in conjunction with the constituent or person that has been impacted to directly just make that ask and to get big employers to understand that these are people that will and can be positive, productive citizens.
Cecilia, can we hear from you? How have you been successful in changing the minds of decision makers to hire you?
Yes. So for me, I would think that, when I had a hard time when I came home, I think it's harder for women than it is men. A lot of the times when people come home, there's more low wage warehouse jobs available, where you're pushing 60, 70 pounds. Women can't do that. So I think that the impact is unique on women. And, we have more of a struggle because we have to try to go and take parenting classes to get our children back. These are struggles that women face because usually 86% of women who get locked up are the primary caregivers. So there definitely needs to be more resources available and support for women. What I'd like to do when I'm faced with an issue with jobs, like, when I first started getting jobs, I had to go to a reentry center where somebody that was, impact friendly, that they would hire me. So that would be one of my first things of information that I would get. Go to where you're accepted. The second thing is talk about who you are today, because they are hiring the person of today. They're not hiring the person who committed a crime 5, 10, 20 years ago. And just like water is constantly moving, so are we. We're forever transforming and moving. We're never in the same space twice. So we shouldn't be judged upon something that occurred in our past.
Toy, do you have any insight you would like to offer this question, or how to convince employers to hire people who've been impacted by felony convictions?
Yes. I myself when I paroled from Tams Work Camp, February 1999. My problem is I never had a trouble finding a job. My issue is finding a good paying job. So, I've always was able to find some type of job, but find a good paying job. So even today, when I'm out in my community, when I talk to different employers, when I'm advocating for our clients, they're getting out of the prison, you educate them on that a lot of these guys are good guys. They just got caught up. And so sometimes that by me sharing that with them, that give them guys an opportunity to apply for employment or get a job. I understand that we got ban the box, but some of our clients don't qualify for ban in the box. They have crimes that can't be sealed. And so you have people that have been out 10 to 15 years, that are college educated, that have degrees. Why are we still using this against them? And so I know we're trying to push some policies to pass that. These guys have been out 15 years. They got something on their background. And even if they had banned the box, you got Google. People can Google you and find out what you did in the past. So there's ways that employers can find out whether you've been convicted or not. I know they got banned the box. There's other ways they can find out. But still, you've been out for 10 or 15 years. They shouldn't use that against them. And I have been, myself here in Bloomington, Illinois, I have been in conversation with country companies and State Farm to see, why can't we at least hire these people in the warehouse? Give an opportunity. I know they can't work around banking and insurance, but give it an opportunity to work in a warehouse. Give them an opportunity to prove themselves that they are a great citizens. They have paid their debt to society. So yes, myself, it never really impacted me. It's just impacted me to get a good job. And also too, to help educate the clients that I work with, that you got to go from point A to point Z instead of from A to Z, that you got to go through certain steps. And a lot of people get out, they want to take off, and you have to bring them back. So, hey, it's okay to flip a burger. It's okay to fold a box. You got to work your way up.
Yeah, I think I would add to that question and say not just people I know with felony convictions, but just about all my homies got their job through their personal network. I have always been raised that it's not just what you know, but it's also who you know. So my first point of advice is to look within your personal network and ask people, is your job hiring? Can you put in a word for me? Do you know somebody who has a felony conviction? Where are they working? Are they hiring? Can I meet them? Will they put in a word for me? Once people see you have a genuine desire to work and be hired, somebody will eventually. I'm a person of faith. I believe the Most High will eventually cross your path with someone who will be able to extend you an opportunity while we work on these policies to change the law so you can live a life with dignity. All right, people. This is our last question. This time has gone by kind of fast. I must say, I'm enjoying myself. I'm going to allow everybody to answer this question, but I'm going to start with these beautiful, phenomenal ladies. Wilette, taking it first. What legislative efforts can the Alliance take on to make sure we're supporting reentry efforts while people are in prison? And I just want to clean that out and say that in my personal coalition, Street Certified, it was the folks from Chicago who came and told me reentry has to start at least 90 days before people touch down. Shout out to Charles Perry. Charles Perry was the person who said that we have to get access to people in institutions to begin to work with them so they can successfully come home. Wilette, how can we get the policy to make that happen?
I think even the Alliance being this coalition of multiple service providers, that giving the right funding and finances, we can begin to set people up to have their IDs. They can be set up to transition into housing. They can be set up to transition right into a job. And if you go in and you find out what their skills are ahead of time, then you can kind of shape what they need to do coming out. But also with policy, I think the Restorative Act, where you allow people to earn their way home, that the Alliance can get behind that policy and begin to push that forward, because people are sitting up wasting away in prison with an astronomical amount of time when they are rehabilitated, and they should be afforded an opportunity to come home. Also, bringing parole back. You know, the parole board should be set up with some people that are directly impacted on it to give advice, so that they can be able to say, look, these people are ready to come home. What else do you want from them? They've served over 10 to 15 years. Now it's just time to transition them back into society. And how can we do that? You know, with dignity, as we've used that word so many times throughout this panel, dignity, you know, and allow people to re-enter society, be redeemed, and be restored.
Cecilia.
Yes. So I believe that the legislative efforts that the Alliance could take is do what we're doing now, building, creating this huge, massive voting block that has never existed before of directly impacted people, having all of our legislators to hire directly impacted people to their teams, to really have our voice there, to really be a part of the solution, to actually have our input as to what we need, and have them use all the specific legislative language to make it happen. I believe prevention is the key to saving humanity. And it starts when we start caring about each other, humanizing each other, and realize what COVID has put out there for America to see. The numbers don't lie. They're showing the racial disparities that have always existed in our communities. So now it's time for our political people in power to do something about it. And we have the Alliance, warriors ready to stand behind our legislative reps and the powers that be to make this happen.
Toy, coming to you next.
And I talked a little bit about this in the panel, that I think that you're saying 90 days. I think that we need to start once they get in the institution. So once they go through the process at whether it's Graham or whether it's Stateville, and whether they get to the prison they're going, we need to start the reentry. So I'm hoping that we can pass something or get something involved that we can make all our prisons, not just a couple, but all of them. I think we need, the more prisons we make, when they get inside the institution and start their reentry, I bet the more success we have. So if they're in a system for 2 or 3 years, they already being trained and built up. So they know what to do. They just got to put it into action. I think it'd be a lot easier to start when they start reentry when they get on the inside, instead of waiting till the last 90 days. Now, would I take last 90 days for them? Yes, I will. But I think that we need to push more policies to start that right when they get in the institution. And also, too, I say that because a lot of the reason why I'm saying that right in, because a lot of our guys are dealing with untreated trauma. And so it takes time to work through that trauma. You know, when they may be they may get inside the prison, and they may not right away start doing what they're doing. They need to deal with that untreated trauma they're dealing with to make that transition happen when they're ready to leave the prison.
I appreciate that. Representative, we certainly hope you're taking notes, but we would also like to hear your thoughts.
No, definitely. I mean, I think that that's absolutely right. Reentry and the planning for that should begin day one. And when you talk about pre-release services and building a continuity of care system, this should be a priority. Policies that address, having Medicaid upon leaving our prisons, IDs, policies that look at, cultivating a program where earned credit is more available once you achieve rehabilitative goals. These are very important. And all of these things obviously need to happen pre-release, so that there is some continuity once you're out. And then also looking at community connections, family unification and reunification and housing. These things need to be, these are so paramount. These are things that need to happen as soon as day one in the prison.
Marlon.
So I would just quickly just add to what all of the other panelists have sort of named is that I think unlocking opportunities for higher ed in prison and reinstating the Pell Grants. One of the things that I've learned through my own experience with being in college is that a lot of times there are certain classes that you can take that help you develop coping skills to deal with the trauma that you've experienced. And I know while people have time in prison, why not give them an opportunity to pursue a higher education while they're in prison, and then they can begin to do the work that's needed within themselves as well. So I would just say unlocking opportunities for higher ed and also access to Pell Grants and whatever other grants are necessary for individuals to participate in, whether it's GED, high school diploma, whether it's a college degree. We should have all of that available to individuals within within the prison system.
I would also just like to alley-oop this other quick policy. We need to resolve minor traffic violations or any low-level warrants, because nothing is more frustrating than doing like a 5-year bid in prison and then coming home and getting locked up for a 3-year-old parking ticket. Like, that is heartbreaking. That is something that should have easily been resolved by running it concurrent with your sentence. And so these are just small things that people who've been in the system can point out to policymakers that we could easily resolve. So the path continues. I am so grateful for our esteemed panel and all of this brilliance that I was able to join you all today. Any additional questions will be answered after the conference, and they can be emailed to carre@saferfoundation.org. It has been such a pleasure to join you all. I strongly, strongly encourage you to support the Alliance, fund them, join them, talk about them, and continue to stay engaged. We appreciate you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brittany.